Well, hello, I'm Josh, and I'm back once again with another great film to tell you about. And to kick off the new year, I wanted to talk about a film noir. And so I've picked a bit of an unconventional one that never ceases to blow me away every time I watch it. That being Anthony Mann's 1949 classic, Reign of Terror. Set during the French Revolution, Maximilien Robespierre has become the most powerful man in France with the help of the guillotine, and now wishes to become dictator. The film Reign of Terror, also known as The Black Book, follows Charles d'Aubigny, agent of a resistance group against Robespierre, who has killed a prosecutor named Duval, whom Robespierre has sent for, and is now going undercover impersonating him. When he meets Robespierre, he learns that the leader's black book, filled with the names of those he intends to have executed, has gone missing, and he fears that if the book got out, the men on the list would unite against him. Knowing this is just what he needs to take down the soon-to-be dictator, d'Aubigny is given only 24 hours to track down the book and stop Robespierre. So as I said, this film was directed by Anthony Mann, who was one of the leading B-movie directors at the time, largely because he had a pretty good knack for making his low-budget B-movies just as good if not better than the big-budget A pictures. And while he worked in several genres and had a great run of westerns with Jimmy Stewart, he's probably best known for directing film noirs. Films like Raw Deal and T-Men are just a few of his classics, but as great as those films are, my personal favorite has always been Reign of Terror. And though Reign of Terror is a bit of an unusual choice, as it's really more of a mix of an adventure film and a period drama, and a very low budget one at that, visually it has the film noir look in spades. And this look can easily be attributed to the film's cinematographer and Anthony Mann's frequent collaborator John Alton. You see, everything I said about Mann's B pictures feeling more like A pictures is often just as much due to Alton's incredible cinematography. In fact, John Alton quite literally wrote the book on cinematography back in the 40s called Painting with Light, where he gave away tons of behind-the-scenes secrets as he broke down his techniques for lighting, apparently much to the dismay of his fellow cameramen. And though much of the equipment he uses in this book is now obsolete, the techniques are still quite practical and relevant today. But that is to say that among film noir fans, John Alton is known to essentially be on the Mount Rushmore of noir cinematographers. In fact, as of now, if you type film noir into Wikipedia, the first image you'll see is one he shot for the film The Big Combo. And just watching this film, you can see how creative they got with the lighting and camera work. It's all very dark and shadowy, a frequent low-budget trick being to cast shadows on blank parts of walls to break up the image and create the look of texture. And you will likely notice that the camera frequently moves very close to the actors, which along with highlighting their great performances, allows for the crew to shoot faster and in smaller areas without running out of space. And when it comes to maximizing the space, this film feels way bigger than the $40,000 it cost to make. But all of this starts to make a bit more sense when you read in the credits produced by William Cameron Menzies. Having worked on epics like Gone with the Wind and his own film with H.G. Wells' Things to Come, along with classics like Rebecca and even consulting on It's a Wonderful Life, Menzies definitely knew a thing or two about great art direction, and he would go on to direct some low-budget classics himself, such as Invaders from Mars and The Maze. So it's really no wonder that he was able to maximize the space and tools they had to make the film feel as big as it could be. And working with John Alton, they were able to use the lighting along with strategic camera angles to ensure that the shots felt more stylish and intentional rather than cramped, as they used the claustrophobic sets to their advantage, creating feelings of tension and unease in the scenes. But not all of the film takes place in these tight rooms. In fact, a majority of the sets and backlot were apparently left over from the much bigger budgeted Joan of Arc, which had come out the year prior, and so the film has some great chases through the streets of Paris, which works both as an exciting way to add variety within the locations, while also making its low-budget nature much harder to pin down. So now on to the cast, and the film stars Robert Cummings, who does an excellent job as the undercover spy Charles d'Aubigny. And he had some good experience in these mystery thriller films, having previously starred in Alfred Hitchcock's film Saboteur, and would later be cast in Dial for Murder as well. And along with Robert Cummings, Norman Lloyd is also here as Talion. And in addition to his hundreds of film roles working with everyone from Charlie Chaplin to Judd Apatow, Lloyd is probably best known for being one of the oldest actors in Hollywood, dying at the age of 106. So it's always great to see him in these older movies. And I might add that he also appeared in Hitchcock's Saboteur with Cummings, quite famously in the fight on the Statue of Liberty. Thankfully though, in this film, he's on the good side. And Arlene Dahl is great in this film as Madeline. And though normally in adventure films from these days, the women often seem pretty helpless, always needing to be saved by the men, in this film she actually ends up saving Daubigny a time or two as well, though at first you are initially a bit unsure whether or not she is on his side. And you also have Richard Basehart, who is quite memorable and menacing here as Robespierre. The year before, he had also worked with Anthony Mann in the film noir He Walked by Night, giving surprising amount of depth to a serial killer who for the most part is rarely seen. And though he plays another ruthless villain here, he is almost unrecognizable as Robespierre, showing off how great of an actor he really was. But probably the most memorable performance in this film has to be that of Arnold Moss as the conniving Fouché, chief of secret police. You can never get a full read on which side he's on, as he seems to hop between the two depending on whichever serves him better. But he really commands the screen every time he's on, and it's very fun to watch. That same year, he also appeared in another Anthony Mann noir, Border Incident, and would go on to appear in tons of classic TV shows and movies over the next 3 decades, including another excellent and underseen gem called The Fool Killer with Anthony Perkins. Beulah Bondi is also great here as Grandma Blanchard, and she is probably best known for playing Ma Bailey in Frank Capra's It's a Wonderful Life, but she had really cornered the market on playing mothers and grandmothers even from a relatively young age, as she also played one of the elderly parents in Leo McCarey's Make Way for Tomorrow while she was only in her late 40s. And her scene in this film is quite an interesting one, as we meet her with her grandchildren in a cozy cottage outside of the city. It feels like the heroes have finally escaped, but once the soldiers come, it quickly becomes one of the most nerve-wracking parts of the film, as they try to convince the children to give up to Daubigny. And speaking of the children, the oldest one is played by none other than a very young Russ Tamblyn in his second movie, and he would go on to be in tons of memorable films including West Side Story, The Haunting, and the iconic TV show Twin Peaks. So if you'd like to watch Reign of Terror, it's a pretty easy one to come by online. The film actually went into the public domain a while back, so there are copies of it all over the internet to stream. That being said, as public domain films usually go, picture quality may vary, so just be aware of that, and keep in mind that the film was re-released the following year with the title The Black Book, so many of the higher quality versions you'll find will be using that title. For instance, the best looking physical copy of the film that I've been able to find is from this Blu-ray set by Mill Creek called Noir Archive Volume 1. And like I said here, it's listed by its re-release title The Black Book, and it's a pretty bare-bones set as it's basically just 9 movies spread across 3 discs, which is fine and definitely maximizes the amount of movies in the collection. And as much as I would love a fancy Blu-ray with commentary tracks and bonus features, this gets the job done, and as you can see, the film looks quite good on it, which is not always the case for a Mill Creek movie collection. But now for my comment question, and I am wondering, what is your favorite film noir? It's one of my favorite genres as it really allows for tons of creativity and variety within it, hence a film like this. So go ahead and put your favorites in the comment section down below and start discussing. Hit the like button if you enjoyed this video, and subscribe if you want to see some more of these. Remember to keep watching movies, and I will see you again soon.